Hi, I'm Scott Bogren, editor-in-chief of Rail Magazine,
And I'm editor Rich Sampson.
and we're here today to talk with you a little bit and give some highlights to our 37th edition of Rail Magazine. And this edition of the magazine is a unique edition that actually is very much in keeping with kind of some of the founding ethos of the publication, which is the idea you won't find necessarily our usual transit system and rail system profiles and discussions of the types of vehicles and the track mileage and all the details that many of you have come to know with Rail Magazine. This is a little bit of a departure in that we're trying to take a bigger picture view on how transit and passenger rail impact communities and how we bring in very basic but important values and some of the procedures to think about rail in a different way. And really to also take a look at rail when it comes to not just its role as a transportation provider, but also its role economically, its role in terms of freedom and mobility, independence, a lot of those things that we all feel, but we don't often see discussed right with the formation of rail systems and rail projects. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich, who will talk a little bit about some of the feature pieces in the publication.
All right, thanks, Scott. We kind of set the stage with a pretty big vision for our values in achieving passenger rail's priority. That's our commentary piece pretty early on that kind of sets up 5 different areas of focus that kind of reoccur throughout the magazine. We talk about perspective, building places, community priorities, a sense of balance between modes, and also making the case for investment at all levels of government. And those topics and themes play out through a series of infographics that we compiled for this edition. It's about 19 pages, full of different types of examples ranging from high-speed rail to streetcars, excuse me, that help make the argument better to whoever you're communicating with, whether it's a congressional representative or a neighborhood association.
Right.
And kind of presenting these ideas that sometimes are very complex in a more visually appealing type of way. And these infographics come from a lot of different rail advocates and organizations from across the world and American communities as well. And we kind of use those themes to set off a couple of discussions that come through in our feature articles. First, from Dr. Laura Hartman from Augustana College in Illinois, is really a different type of piece than we've ever published in this magazine. It's about values and justice and hospitality and some of the principles that community leaders, activists, whoever should have in mind before you draw any line on a map or decide where stations should go. What is this service trying to achieve for people?
Right.
And more of a philosophical perspective on community and how we take care of each other. So that kind of sets a much bigger picture look at mobility in communities. And then we kind of get a little more pragmatic in a discussion of what degree do transit projects, whether it's a streetcar, BRT, even high-frequency fixed-route bus service, achieve in building a sense of place and community, whether that requires a dedicated lane of travel, what level of frequency is required to make something feel more permanent.
Right.
And this is kind of a recognition of some of the very heated debates that have gone on in the passenger rail and transit advocacy community over the past year about whether a streetcar project that doesn't have its own lane can really be effective. We kind of take a bigger picture view on that, and inspired by our earlier topics of justice and hospitality, how does a community really entrench its values by a transit system? And then kind of the last major piece we have is by Rip Ramson, who's director of a foundation in the Detroit metro region that's really gone behind the M1 streetcar line in Detroit, which is currently under construction. And he kind of goes through the process by which they build political support, build community support, and then some larger priorities on how you go about a process that's inclusive, that's lasting, and representative of all the different concerns and factions. And he makes the case of why this is more important than designing what the stations are like or what vehicles you select to operate the service. If you don't have that kind of level of buy-in, it's ultimately going to be doomed for failure. So when you look at kind of those perspectives together with our infographics and our commentary piece, you get a sense of a different level of community involvement in using data and ideas to make the case for passenger rail and high quality transit investment.
And I'll kind of close our video here for Rail Edition number 37. Think about the real concept of placemaking. It's something you hear a lot about in all forms of community and public transportation. And it's one of those things that you kind of know it when you see it. You know that the streetcars in New Orleans are part of what makes that place. And there's no magic bullet or cookie cutter to follow to make a rail system, a transit system, a key component in placemaking. There are values, though, and there are conditions around those values. That's what we're trying to get at with this edition, and we think the articles really speak to that in a powerful way. So speaking for Rich, I hope you enjoy Rail 37. And as always, you'll see at the end of the video our email addresses and our Rail Magazine Twitter feed. We encourage feedback and engagement with our readers on these key topics that we think should provoke a lot of thought. So thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoy Rail Edition number 37.